Welcome to our Talent Talk series, where we bring you all things talent related from our perspective as a specialized recruiting and HR consulting firm, as well as from the thousands of business leaders and candidates we speak with each year. Whether you are a startup or a Fortune 500, we all have talent challenges. I'm Mandy Resmondo, Corporate Vice President for Landrum Talent Solutions. Joining me today is Melissa Haid, our Vice President of Delivery, and Sue Keith, who is our Marketing Recruiting Practice Subject Matter Expert. So, welcome, ladies. In today's conversation, we'll be discussing the candidate experience. We know companies have spent years talking about the employee experience, which is critical, but there's this whole other component that happens before that, and that's the candidate experience, which you can imagine has several different components to it. So we want to jump into what that looks like today. So first, let's start with Sue. Sue, why should a company be concerned with having a positive candidate experience?
Thanks, Manny. Well, as you mentioned, many companies, not most companies, put a lot of effort and investment into their employee experience. But that starts typically from day one of the job. What we'd like to suggest is the employee experience actually starts on the first moment that person applied for the position or however they got connected to that role. And so thinking about the employee experience more from a candidate experience from that day one all the way through to the actual day one and beyond. So that's super important. I would argue that maybe even more importantly is thinking about the candidate experience for everyone who did not get that job.
Yeah.
So there's a real direct connection between the candidate experience and the company's brand. And I think a lot of times hiring managers may not make that connection. So if you think about it, if you have a bad experience through whether it be the application process, the interview process, whatever it be, you're never going to forget that. So that's especially important for consumer brands. So if I have a bad candidate experience with a product or brand, I will never be buying that product or service again. And I'm probably going to tell all my friends not to either. And it does extend to the B2B side. You never know. I could be down the road a decision maker on buying your company's product or service or a part of the influencing decision on that purchase. So I think the bottom line is if you don't have a positive experience, you're never going to forget that. And if you think about it, particularly in this job market where there are hundreds of people applying for each job that's out there, that's posted out there, that's potentially hundreds of unhappy people if they walk away with a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah. And the market will turn, right? So I think that sometimes when you have a lot of applicants in certain fields, it is clients and hiring managers can get a little bullish around people being, so many candidates in the pool, but they will always remember, and they'll remember if it's a good experience too, right? So I
absolutely.
think
yes,
those are
absolutely.
always good
Even
things
if
to remember.
it's important to ensure a positive experience, especially for those who didn't get the job.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So from your experience with being a marketing practitioner in your past life, who owns the employer brand piece? Is that a, collab between HR and marketing, or is that marketing that owns that? What does that look like?
Well, that answer varies depending on the company. Typically, it falls under the HR function. I would like to argue it should be more of a joint initiative between the HR function and the marketing function, partially because marketers are always, if they're doing their job well, they're always focused on the customer experience.
Right.
And it's very similar. Thinking through all those touch points, thinking about the communications that you have with a customer, thinking about the communications you have with a candidate or an applicant, that every one of those, it's kind of part and parcel to what marketers do. So I think best approach is a collaboration between those two functions.
Yeah.
I think also a big piece of that is the referrals. So even if candidates are declined, you want to be able to nurture, and that is, part of employment branding and the partnership with marketing. And to your point, it's not unlike the sales cycle. You want to be able to still capture candidates and ask for referrals because we just don't know as far as where the next opportunity is going to come from that you need to hire, and wanting to make sure that there's that synergy between marketing and HR on the employer branding and what you're doing with those applicants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Melissa, in your experience as a seasoned recruiters and all the years you've been doing this, what's your experience that you've had reaching out to someone that has said no to a job because of the reputation?
Yeah, it's a great point, Mandy. I think that we're seeing more of that now, having a little bit more of that savvy buyer, right? There's various websites and more informed job applicants right now. On the search side, we're going after passive candidates, so people that are in seat, and you will hear, if there is that reputation or different industry trends pertaining to a certain company name. Clients sometimes engage with us to really sell that opportunity. And in the same instance for our interim offerings, that definitely the reputation of your organization and your company brand will get out there, especially if you're using multiple firms to try to fill one order. So definitely can take an extra step in the recruiting process.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you, I have a question, with your experience, what can a company do to build or strengthen their EVP or their brand?
I think it starts internally first. I guarantee probably would happen in our own company. If you went around and surveyed every employee and said, give me one sentence to describe our company, you get very different answers.
Right.
So I think it starts internally to make sure every one of those people may be involved in an interview process. So if that's not a consistent story, you've got a breakdown already. So I think it starts internally and making sure. Now, people can use their own words to describe the company, but as long as it's got the same message, I think that's really important. So start there. And I think Melissa's going to talk in a sec about kind of the tactical ways in which you can ensure a positive experience throughout your application interview process. But it's thinking about all those touch points and are they delivering on that same message?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. We talk about that even as we're hiring and recruiting internally and who we have working on those positions and making sure that message is very consistent across the board. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Melissa, did you want to share?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I think, Sue and I have talked about this quite a few times. And one of the things that you can do, and fun fact, it's free. It's not going to require consultants or anything like that. But if you sit down with your team and maybe invite marketing in, or as a recruiting team, conduct an audit. So applicant tracking systems are programmed with various touch points. And I think that sometimes we implement systems and we're not the end user. So make a test account or talk to your applicant tracking system provider and actually walk yourself through. Automation is fantastic. And I think that all of us are fans of it. And, we've got generative AI that we utilize almost every day in our lives. But what is the message? And in the recruiting industry, the biggest thing that you're going to hear is, I never heard back. Or when I did hear back, it was an automatic response. And I don't even think that my resume even got to anybody. And, if nobody really did look at the resume, maybe work on messaging that just says simply, thank you for applying with us, and we will get back to you if it is a fit or not, right? But that's where you could pull in marketing to see what it is with your employer brand, as far as what is our voice, what are we saying? And talent attraction is key. You want to constantly be nurturing people to come to your website, but they're not going to do it if they spend 3 hours to just try to upload a resume and if they never hear back. So what are the best ways to communicate with candidates? What does your recruiting team look like? Everybody's operating with less, but consider your messaging. And that's something that would take time, and time is money, but it isn't an investment. So I think those are some of the best ways to do that. And then Sue and I have also talked about this, when you are declining candidates, what is the best way to do that? And really think about that candidate on the other end. And if they've been through 6 and 7 interviews, is an email Friday at 4 o'clock the best time to convey that? And, when somebody has taken the time out of their day to do typically rounds of virtual interviews and then in-person interviews, maybe a phone call from a hiring manager at that point could be something that would really just be a nice touch. And people are always going to remember, how you make them feel when they've been declined. So, and maybe those are different, right, for each candidate and every level of the process. But, and one other thing when you're auditing your applicant tracking system is you should be inviting them to join your talent, whatever you want to call it, your talent pool, your employee, kind of network, whatever the right term for your company is, and marketing will help you with that. But you don't want to lose touch with somebody that has come to your website or engaged with your company that could be future talent and future referrals. So.
Yeah. That's great, Melissa. I think just in the recruiting world, we hear all the time, and we have for years, that people feel like they go into a black hole.
Yes.
And they're lost forever.
Right.
And that's an impression, right, that person has of your organization. So, and that they'll carry that with them. So I think just being more mindful and intentional about how we make someone feel while they're in that journey of looking for a new role is extremely important. So
I agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add 2 points. One is, I understand there's some legal implications of what you can say back to a candidate, or your firm's in-house attorneys may be really conservative with that messaging, but you can still say it in a kind, empathetic way, even if you don't say a lot. The other thing I was going to add to what Melissa was saying about applicant tracking systems, almost every applicant tracking system we've worked with of our own and with our clients, there are automated messaging set up along the stage. And there are some times when our contacts at our client don't know what messages go out when. So in terms of that audit, make sure you know that if you close out a job order, everyone's going to get an automatic, what we call a Dear John. That person may have already been communicated to, like you said, Melissa, had gotten a call from someone, or if we're working on behalf of the client, we've contacted them. So then get this, they've already been told a bad answer, and then to get this automated Dear John to kind of double down on the bad news is something to consider.
Yeah, great point. And really good conversation today. We will have follow-up videos on more about the candidate experience to come, so stay tuned for those. If you want to get in touch with any of us, we're on LinkedIn, easy to find, or you can go to our website, Landrum Talent Solutions, and find us there and connect with us too. Any last thoughts, Sue or Melissa?
I'm just really glad we're having this conversation. It's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And just treat everybody how you'd like to be treated, right? One of the golden rules. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.